In this tutorial, we'll look at how to validate addresses before shipping an order. Validating addresses can reduce delivery complications by helping ensure that the shipping address on the order is accurate. For example, it can check for misspelled addresses and make appropriate changes. It can also help you estimate the final shipping cost by determining if the address type is commercial or residential. Addresses can be validated from ShipBridge and in the main SellerCloud interface. We'll focus first on validating addresses in ShipBridge. Open the menu and click Options. Now open the Rates tab. This page configures both the rate calculations and the address validations. Enter your API credentials for all the carriers that you ship with. The information you need to obtain API keys for all carriers is available on our documentation site at wiki.sellercloud.com. If you ship through multiple carriers, but only have the shipping API for one, like UPS for example, ShipBridge will request address validation from UPS for all orders, even if the shipping carrier is FedEx or the US Postal Service. Now let's look at this example of validating an address on an order. All of these orders on the grid are not yet validated, as indicated by the yellow dot in this column. Select an order. Validate by right-clicking on the order and selecting Validate Address from the context menu. Or you can hit the Validate Address button in the address console at the bottom left. By default, ShipBridge will return a suggested address for addresses that do not match the US Postal Service's database, which you can accept or decline. If you decline the suggestion, the address remains the same. If you accept it, the address updates and the yellow dot will turn green. There are two types of suggested changes: major changes and minor changes. An example of a major change would be to correct a misspelled address. Minor changes might be adding a +4 number to a zip code, or adding abbreviations like DR for drive or LN for lane to the main street name. By default, when the address is validated, it will include the minor changes as well. However, minor changes can be set to change automatically without requiring you to accept the suggested change. We'll see that setting shortly. After validating, the address type will display whether the address is commercial or residential in the address type column and as an icon in the address console. The address type affects the rate calculator. If the address type is residential, the rate calculator will return higher rates for carriers that charge a higher rate for residential deliveries. To validate multiple order addresses in bulk, select the orders and click Validate Selected Orders from the menu. There also is an option on the menu to validate multiple orders without suggestions. When using this option, a window will pop up at the first problematic address. You have the option of using the suggestion, skipping the order, or clicking on the plus sign and selecting from these options to accept all suggestions or to reject them. Orders that cannot be validated will display in the error log. This setting will require address validation on every order before it can be shipped. As explained earlier, the setting to silently validate standard changes without suggestions will enable the system to make minor changes automatically, like adding a +4 number to the zip code and abbreviations to the street address, without requiring you to accept the suggested change. ShipBridge can be set to not allow changes to a street address or to a zip code. These settings can be enabled by your ShipBridge administrator or by SellerCloud support. When these settings are enabled, the address and zip code fields will be grayed out in the address console. Now let's look at validating addresses in SellerCloud. Typically, this is done when you want the addresses to be validated before the orders are processed by the warehouse shipping department. First, you need to configure API credentials. On the Shipping API page, under the Company Settings, enter your API credentials. If they have already been configured in ShipBridge, you can export it to SellerCloud with the Export to CWA button. Open an order. Now open the Action menu and click Verify Shipping Address. On the following page, there are 3 address columns. The first one is the original address that the customer submitted. The second is a suggested address whenever there is one available. And the third column is the final address. To use the suggested address, click the Accept button. This will update the address on the order and change its status to verified. To verify multiple orders at once, select the orders from the Manage Orders page and click Verify Shipping Address. The validation process is the same as with a single order, but you can navigate from order to order using these links. To learn more about validating addresses in ShipBridge, please visit wiki.sellercloud.com.